Hi, everybody. Okay, do you remember my shtick? Please repeat after me. This is the science of mind.
This is the science of mind.
And it teaches me that I create my reality exactly according to my thoughts and beliefs.
That I create my reality exactly according to my thoughts and beliefs.
It teaches me that there is only one and I am one with it.
That there is only one and I am one with it.
Yes, and it teaches me that I am magnificent.
I am magnificent.
Now look at someone beside you and say, I am magnificent.
I am magnificent.
Awesome. Thank you. So I've always promised that if I hear a pretty good joke, that what I would do is tell it off the podium. So this morning I heard a pretty good joke. So there were these 3 salesmen, and they were farm equipment salesmen. And they had to fly out to the Midwest to do this training seminar on new farm equipment. So they arrive there, and they do their week-long seminars, and they are about to go back, and they have a rental car. So they're driving the car to the airport. Now, one of the guys is a Hindu guy. One of the guys is a Jewish guy, and the third guy is a negative guy. We all have our religion, right? So as they're driving along, the car breaks down, and they're really close to the time they have to fly off. And the negative guy goes, Jesus, Murphy, we're going to be late again. And of course, the Hindu guy goes like, just relax, just breathe. And the Jewish guy goes, it's going to be okay. There's a farm just right here. Why don't we go and see whether we can get some help to get the car fixed? So they go into the farmer's yard and knock on the door. And the fellow comes out and he goes, well, yes, there is somebody here who can fix your car in this little town that we have. But he goes home Friday at 5 o'clock and it was 20 after 5. So you're really out of luck. But he can do it tomorrow, I'm sure. And you're welcome to stay here if you like, and I'll feed you dinner. And I have 2 beds in the house, and I have a bunk in the barn. Okay, so of course the 3 guys are going, okay, who's going to take the barn? And the negative guy is like, I'm not sleeping in the barn. I'm sleeping in the house. So the Hindu guy goes, okay, I'll sleep in the barn, and you guys sleep in the house. So it's nighttime. Everybody's sleeping. Knock, knock, knock on the door. And it's, of course, the Hindu guy. He says, I can't sleep out here. Cows are sacred, and it just doesn't feel right that I sleep in the barn with the cows. Okay, well, then you come in. The Jewish guy says, I'll sleep in the barn. Okay. So the Jewish guy goes and sleeps in the barn. A little while later, knock, knock, knock on the door. Yes. Oh, he says, we think that pigs are unclean, and I really can't sleep in the barn with the pig because there is a pig in there. The negative guy goes, oh, Jesus, Murphy, like I've got to sleep in there now? Okay. So he goes out to the barn, and a little while later, there's a knock on the door. It's the cow and the pig. So is there anybody in your life like that? So pretty good, huh? So today we're talking about giving. That was a little bit of giving of laughter. It really had nothing else to do with anything else. But the words of the song that Pierre sang and wrote this morning, Giving with Love, is part of what I'm going to talk about today. Another thing I'm going to talk about, and I always like to throw a little visualization into your mind, is garden hoses and what that has to do with giving. And also, we're going to do a little exercise called your Abundance Quotient. Okay? So are you ready? So giving with love, we've heard that said so many times, right? What does that mean? What does that mean to you to say, give with love? Interesting, isn't it? It just rolls off our tongue, but have we ever really thought about what that means? Giving with love, in my estimation, is giving from a place of abundance, giving from a place of believing that there is more than enough, giving from a place of no expectation of anything in return. How many times do we give that way? Sometimes we give because someone else has given to us, so we think we should. Sometimes we give, let's say in the Center for Spiritual Living, because we're being asked to give. Are we giving from a place of our absolute prosperity? Or are we giving out of obligation? Is that giving out of love? And what happens when you don't give from a place of love, whether it be here, a gift, a hug, love, the other kind of love? What happens when we don't give from a place of love? What are we writing the check to the universe saying? There isn't enough. You remember when I used that term, writing a check to the universe, right? So that brings me to this idea of garden hose. And this was actually the metaphor that my husband told me this morning. I am very connected with a lot of people in my life, especially if I've had a chance to meet you. I will actually have very symbolic dreams about huge shifts in your life if I know who you are and what you've got going on. And I had at 2:30 this morning this idea that my husband went away. Now he's working in Ottawa right now. And I thought, okay, well, I'm talking to him at 6 o'clock this morning, so, I can last that long. But for about 10 minutes, I cried because it felt like this real abandonment feeling. And so at 6 o'clock this morning, I said to him, I had a dream, and I told him what it was. And where are you going? was what I wanted to know. He says, actually, I'm coming home. Okay. He said, but what I decided last night was the metaphor of the garden hose. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, imagine a garden hose and it has the spigot or nozzle or whatever on the end. And depending on how you turn it, how much water comes out or no water comes out. And he said, my life has been with this spigot that I haven't been even working. And yet it's I who have the power to turn the nozzle or squeeze the, what would you call that, handle? Yeah. And he said, I've decided I'm just going to take that whole thing right off and just let it flow. So how many of us have that nozzle and we're not using it? How many of us are in this place of actual universe giving us everything, just waiting for us to either throw the nozzle off or let a little come out? See what it feels like? I mean, we don't have to do it all at once. But is our life like that? I know mine is. And especially when I'm faced with things aren't going the way that I think they should, I've probably got the thing turned off, even the water turned off at the house. But it's there, it's waiting, isn't it? So that's the givingness of the universe to us. That's what it means when we are not opened up to the flow. You hear the word, the flow. Get in the flow. Get out of your own way. And I used to wonder, what does it mean to get out of my own way? And it's that just squeeze the nozzle a little bit. Allow a little bit out. Test it out. The beauty is you don't have to do it at the speed of anybody else. You can do it at your speed. You're the garden hose. You're the flow. You're the maneuverer of the spigot. You are all of it. Nobody else. You are writing the ticket to the universe. The check, however big. So I want to read some words from Ernest Holmes. And because I didn't want to wear my goggles, I printed it out a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is actually from Creative Living, which was a magazine, I believe. This was volume 18. Givingness by Ernest Holmes. Life undoubtedly belongs to the ones who take it. But how can we take it unless we first give it? It is impossible. So true givingness is the transmitting of the self to everything we do, no matter what it is, the outpouring of ourselves into everything, into every undertaking, with an enthusiastic zest, love, kindness, and friendliness. It is a fundamental law in mental polarity, cause and effect. That which goes out comes back the way it went, plus the intensification of that which is less contracted en route, plus the intensification of that which has contracted en route. If we dislike someone, he will feel it. No matter what we say. Have you experienced that? Why is there antagonism and resistance? It is because we are giving lip service. Boy, that resonates. In reality, we cannot fool God or each other. Wow, isn't that the truth? There is something in us that knows the real from the false. Always. You know those little white lies we tell each other and ourselves? But we know, you can feel it, can't you? It is because in the universe we cannot set up a camouflage. We like to think we do. There is an all-penetrating eye, an all-hearing ear, an all-knowing mind, and we cannot resist the inevitable result of the law. We can make no bargains with life. We should give only when the gift and the giver are one and the same. Amen, Ernie. If we want to get the most from life, we can only do it as we have first given the most of ourselves. Then the response comes back multiplied. Think about it. When you meet up with a friend or a stranger or whatever, you do feel their energy, don't you? It's either welcoming, opening, or restrictive, or fearful. And so what we're essentially doing, this vibration that we are, is we're giving to the universe what it is that we desire back. So I'm going to go through this abundance quotient with you, one line at a time. And I invite you, if you would like to have this to do yourself later, send me an email. And I can give you the email after if you want to write it down. This really resonated with me because this gives the idea of how open you really are to receiving. We talk about the idea of receiving and giving and having it two sides of the coin. So let's look at this first one. I find it easy to accept gifts from other people. Most of us, what do we say? Oh, I'm a giver. The thing is that what we heard earlier in some of the readings is, yes, if I give you something but you say no to it, then it isn't a full circle, is it? And so in a way, you give a gift either as the receiver or the giver, don't you? So where do you sit in this? 1 being that's never true for you, and 5 being it's always true for you. And think about that with all of these statements as I go through them. I find it easy to give myself gifts. And is that true with no guilt attached? Do you feel you have to justify it to anybody? Good for you. Interesting, isn't it? Because there are a lot of people, and not necessarily us, because we've been working this, haven't we? But there's a lot of people who do not feel good giving themselves something unless they say, I gave 10 things away already, so now I feel justified to give myself this one thing. Number 3, I see myself as a generous person. What areas are you generous in if you say yes to this? Is it in everything? Or just some things? And then notice that it's those some things that you feel very prosperous in, don't you? You feel like it is a bottomless pit, really. That there is more and more to give. That's why you're generous in that area. And think about the areas that you're not so generous in, where you're pulling back. Why? Because we're saying to the universe there isn't enough. But where's the universe? Right here. Number 4, I believe it is spiritual to prosper. And this says yes. But do you believe that? Do you believe that it is the law of the universe to be abundant and prosperous? Do you really, truly believe that? And is that showing up in your life in every way? And if not, why not? I'm not saying any of this is good or bad, but we're doing an inventory here, aren't we? Finding out what is my abundance quotient, because it is exactly what I'm receiving. And so if it's short in some area, it's because some area is, I've put a kink in the hose, or I've turned the water off at the house, but it's still there. I give a generous percentage of my money, time, and talent to spiritual work. There was a time when I could say no. I didn't do any of that. And my life reflected that. My life was exactly equivalent to the work that I did, standing behind a chair, cutting people's hair. I got exactly that amount of money and that amount of free time and that amount of happiness out of my life. And when I started to be more generous in every way, in sharing of my time, my talents, my treasure, being generous with my listening, being generous in all those ways, that my life started to be more complete. Does that make sense? So think about that. Again, it's not right or wrong what you're doing, but if it's not working for you, staying where you are is going to keep not working for you. I feel comfortable asking others for help. Could you just go up to anybody here and ask for help? You could. What would you do if they said no? Would you be okay with that? You need to be, because you want to be able to say no to somebody if they ask you as well, right? So it's equally as important to recognize that. And is that what we're afraid of when we ask for help? Is that they'll say no and, oh my God, what am I going to do then? Or maybe they don't like me. Maybe I've just proved it, that I'm not worthy. What is it? What fear comes up when we don't want to ask for help? Or they're going to find out that I really, I want them to help me move, but they're going to find out how messy I am if they come over, so I'll do it myself. Whatever that is. I feel comfortable being asked for help by others. Do you feel free to say yes or no? Do you feel like you have to justify your answer to someone? Good question, eh? I am a contributing, participating member of life. Whew. What does that mean? And where do you sit with that? Because just looking someone in the eye and smiling at them is contributing to life. Recognizing that you have value and I have value. Like standing in the grocery line and the woman is putting things through, or the man, it's very rarely a man, but putting the food through, and they don't even look up. They say their little word, their little spiel to you, but they don't even look up. So contributing to life, you can actually say thank you and wait for them to look you in the eye and mean it. Or when they say, hi, how are you? Ask them how they are too. Because normally people just say fine and let everything go. And that person becomes anonymous, don't they? And we could be that anonymous person, and we have been, haven't we, at times. I have a surplus of money so that I do not live on the edge. That wasn't always true for me. It is today. Is it true for you? I actually had this idea that if I wasn't a certain amount in debt, that life wasn't worth getting up in the morning. I really did. And when my debt load would go below 10,000, I would go and borrow more and do something to create the debt. I really did. And I didn't recognize that I was doing that. And I would tell people, and I've told this before, I was swimming across a lake with a bag of boulders. I didn't realize I could drop the boulders and pick new ones up on the other shore. I thought life was supposed to be hard because that's how people in business behaved. They were in debt. So, okay, I'm in business. I don't have a right to have lots of money in the bank. I need to have debt to be happy. Is that true, though? No. Gee, I wish somebody had told me that long before I was 40. It really was a treadmill to be on. Talk about turning off the garden hose, or putting a couple of knots in it. I am comfortable with risk and ambiguity. Are you? What is risk? I think it means something different to everybody, doesn't it? Risk sometimes is just the moving into something you don't know what it's going to be like. Not having control over the end result. That's pretty risky to put yourself in that place, isn't it? So where are you in the quotient of that? I am at ease and comfortable with money. Take your wallet out just for a moment. Not that I'm going to ask you to, hand it over or anything. Just take it out and take a look inside at how you have your money organized. Is your wallet stuffed with all kinds of things other than money? Is the money all crumpled? Is it all in fine order and perfectly placed?
Yes, in numerical order.
Because it's a clue as to what you think about money. And you can put it back if you want now. Wim would like anyone's wallet that they don't want.
Yeah, open to receive, yeah.
Interesting idea, isn't it? So that's just a little clue as to what we think about things in our life. What kind of respect and comfort level you have with money. I used to, because I was in a business where people tipped, I used to have money in every pocket. And so if I needed money for something, I would go and just check my pockets, and there would always be at least a $20 bill, if not more. I'm not so much in that side of the business anymore, and every now and then I wish I had pockets full of money, but I don't. So I would have to actually deliberately go around and do that. But now I hold a little more in my wallet some days, and now with a debit card, it's kind of hard to do that, isn't it? You just look at it, and it doesn't quite mean the same thing as cash. It is easy for me to give and receive love. Most of us know exactly what we want it to look like in receiving it, don't we? How do we give it? Each one of us differently. And what does that look like? Because you get it back exactly how you're giving it. Hello, mirror. So if you're complaining about it, who can do something about it? It's not that someone out there somewhere, because they're not going to be attracted to you if they're different than the vibration you're putting out, right? My life flows effortlessly, and my needs are always met. Now be honest about this one. Not that I haven't asked you to be honest about the others, but does it flow effortlessly? And the only time that it doesn't is when we expect things to look differently than they do. Or we've put out a mixed message. What we really, really desire and what we've put out there is really different, isn't it? And that's what we learn here, is that things get created twice, first in our mind and then in the manifest world. And so whatever you've got going on, where did it start? Right here in the noggin. So I receive compliments graciously. Can you just say thank you when someone gives you a compliment? Oh, this old thing. Or what would you fill the blanks with? Do you receive compliments graciously? You are magnificent. You are magnificent. What do you say to that? Most of us are taught to not open up and go, wow, yes. Yes. Or you look really great today. Thanks. Yes. Exactly. But what are we taught about that? Right? It's like, don't you dare say that, especially as a little kid. We're taught that that's bad. But is it? No. Because that's where you learn arrogance then, don't you? Because there's a real difference between just saying thank you and appreciating it and saying, yes, I agree with you, and, oh yes, I agree with you. There's a difference. And in that arrogance, there's actually a fear that that's not true. Right? I give acknowledgement of others easily and frequently. When's the last time you told somebody, good job? Or you really did that well? Or I love it that you're in my life. You make such a difference. Awesome. And that's the way we should be. I'm not going to shit on you today. That's the way I should be. I know. The thing is that, again, when you're insecure, when you don't believe that you're fully supported, then you come from a place of, I've got to hold back on the compliments and the acknowledgement too, because somehow there's just not going to be enough for me. Somehow I'm going to go into that place of being less than. Somehow, all of a sudden, I'm going to fall off my pedestal and someone else is going to get to sit there and not me. And yet, every one of us is unique. Would you agree? We're all so individually different that how can your pedestal be the same as mine? I mean, we all get to sit on our own pedestal, don't we? However high or low or even disappearing it is. I still have another page. Are you good with this? Okay. I am optimistic in general about life, not only when things are going just as I think they should. Did you have a moment of not being optimistic? I did at 2:30 this morning for about 10 minutes. And then I remembered. And the difference is that the more you study and the more you prove to yourself that this is a benevolent universe, the shorter and shorter the remembering becomes that it is okay and that you can be optimistic and that this is revealing to you something new unfolding. And the more it rattles you, the more it's asking you to be that more that you already are. And when you are holding back, that's when it hurts. I am happy about other people's success. I was 22 when I met a gentleman who was in the hair business. He was actually in hair replacement and transplantation and that sort of thing. And he was the first person I had ever encountered in business that was going to be a supplier for me who wanted me to be successful and said, yes, you may pay a lot of money to me for what it is that I provide, but you are going to be able to do so much more with what it is that I'm providing you than anybody else can, including the support. And so it was a learning experience for me to recognize that it was a win-win-win situation. You've heard that said before, right? Where everybody has to benefit in that circle of interaction. And that was his viewpoint, and he was highly successful because of that. And his idea was that the more successful I was, the more successful he was going to be. And also that the customer that I was working with was going to be super happy, or else how could I be successful? What a wonderful teacher he was. I feel capable of handling life situations. Oh, sometimes that doesn't feel like that's the case, eh? But again, when we remember that we're fully supported, that we're willing to ask for help because it's not bad or wrong to ask for help, then we are always fully supported. And I think those of us that are suffering in some situation, and many of us do at different times, and some of you are even right now, knowing that the support is there for you, it's just a matter of asking. whether it be to the universe and bring me the ideas, fill my consciousness with the right ideas to get through this. Whatever it is, are you comfortable? I enjoy receiving praise and compliments. That can be a tough one. That goes with the little kid thing, doesn't it? I remember, actually, it was a psychologist teaching about how to work with staff. And they said encouragement versus praise. Because encouragement is empowering, praise is, I appreciate you, I like you, and so as a consequence you'll do for me because I am the big cheese. So when I think about that, do I enjoy receiving praise and compliments? Yes. But do I do the things I do to get praise and compliments? I did at one time. I don't now. I don't know how you feel about that. I think there was a time, and there are actually certain people in our lives that we look for praise from, and if we don't get it, we don't feel complete. And wouldn't it be so much more empowering if it wasn't praise we were looking for from them, if they knew enough to just be encouraging? You don't need my praise because you're brilliant. How does it feel? Yeah. And how does it feel? And that's the encouraging. Awesome. I am accepted by most of the people I meet. Ooh. Are we? A lot of judgmental people out there, and they're judgmental because they're scared S-less. So I am accepted by most of the people I meet. If I truly believe that to be true, then what happens? That becomes my reality. And where does it begin? By giving myself acceptance first. I accept me for who I am. For all my foibles, for all my learning, for all my I'm going to be here for another 50 years because I've got so much to learn. I accept me first. I accept other people just as they are. Ever had a judgmental moment about somebody? No. Yeah, that cow and pig did this morning. I trust life for the highest and best to be mine. Now, we teach that here. And we teach it from a standpoint of don't believe me, or anybody else for that matter, that that's the truth in life. It's to prove it to yourself. If you have to journal every day to prove it to yourself so you can read back and say, oh yeah, that did happen. However, whether it be sharing with a friend, that look how it turned out. I didn't expect it to turn out this way, but this is even more than I ever thought. It's like a house we bought. We bought it 7 days before we had to move out of another place, and fortunately everything happened really quickly. And what ended up with this house, it had a sauna, and for a Finnish person, that was like an absolute gift. So in all the stress, which I did get stressed about it, I thought I'm not going to find a place to live. And it even had a sauna. So, do you trust? I allow changes to happen with ease. And I'm only laughing because it's coming from me. I have control issues, huge ones, but that's okay. And then, I might cry or fret for about 10 minutes, and then I remember, okay, I set this in motion. I choose to be more of who I am. And so change has to happen, or else how can I be if I stay the same? Or the relationship. I have an abundance of ideas always available, except when you really have to think of it, right? They come flowing at 2 o'clock in the morning like nobody's business. Well, then you know what I say? Get up and write them down and go back to sleep. But yes, as you train yourself to be open, you do have an abundance of abundance of ideas. I had two tongues there for a moment. Talk about abundance. I easily see options and opportunities, even in the midst of challenges. I'm aiming for that, but that's sort of lower on the scale. Do I always see opportunity? I do when I'm hearing someone else's story. It's easier then, isn't it? But in our own challenges, do we see the opportunity? Not always. So where are you in the quotient for that? I know I am creative. I didn't say artistic, I said creative. Would you say that that's a 5 for most of you? Because you're creating all the time. Every thought creates. Every feeling is creating. So can you say you're a 5 now? Yeah. Okay. I understand that giving and receiving are the same thing. We talked about that earlier this morning. I didn't know that before, that it's the flip side of a coin. I used to say I love to give, but I really don't care to receive. But I mean, you have to have receivers to be able to give, don't you? I have total faith and no fear about having what I need. That's true. Change it to what I want, and that's not true, right? For all of us. Because we get caught up in what we think we want versus what it is that we really truly need, right? I didn't need to have an extra $5,000 in debt all the time to be motivated to do good business, but I thought that that's what I wanted. I trust the natural abundance of the universe to provide me with the appropriate things at the appropriate time. Now, when you start to pay attention, things really do sometimes even arrive at the 11th hour. And why do they arrive at the 11th hour? Because that's when you finally gave up and it came in. That's when you finally opened the hose. Interesting idea, isn't it? I used to say, it always comes to me at the 11th hour, and yet who was in control of that? Okay. I enjoy paying my bills and bless them. The first New Thought person I ever met wrote TYG on every check in the line of what it was for. Thank you, God. And I thought it was kind of woo-woo. Like, thank you, God. What's that got to do with it? You made the money. You're writing the check. You're giving it out. Like, what's thank you, God got to do with it? I had a lot to learn. But to recognize that God is your source and that when you bless those checks, there are some people who don't have a place to live to write a check for. So if you have to think of that to be able to bless that check, then do that. Some people don't have bills because they don't have a life. If you have bills, you have a life. If you have to pay income tax, it's because you made good money. Because you had everything else looked after that you didn't have write-offs. Right? It's an interesting way to turn the diamond, isn't it? I am aware of my unlimited spiritual resources. And that's what I hope we teach you here, is that you are unlimited. And your resources are unlimited because they're spiritual, they're not material. And it's in that spirituality that they become manifest. And did you notice that each statement was an affirmation that I made? So let's take a couple of minutes to just do a short meditation to anchor these ideas. And if you do want these to do your own quotient to see where you're at, to just ponder that, my email address is ann@, and then Center for Spiritual Living, Waterloo Region, but just the letters, cslwr.org. And it's Ann without an E. And you can ask me again, I'll tell you. So I will sit for this. So join with me in consciousness. As I relax and breathe into this moment, and know that this feeling that I have right now is because I have explored who I am a little deeper than I ever did before. And it is from this place that I recognize that this feeling that I am having is the void that I have created to allow more to come into my life. And today I choose to make my world a beautiful place in which to live, not only for me, but for everyone. So I begin by saying, I accept responsibility for my life. I accept responsibility for my thoughts and feelings, my actions and reactions, and I exercise control over them. I use my ability to choose and make wise choices. I have all the help I need, for I have the power of God within me. I turn to this ever-present power to receive guidance, courage, and reassurance, for it is within me. It is always within my reach. I choose to do and be only that which I truly want to do and be. I say yes to me first. I am the ultimate receiver of my giving. I exercise my yes and no power with me and everyone. I do not postpone my good. I accept it now. I know that it is available to me in this very moment. I take charge of my thoughts and feelings. I do not let outer things disturb my inner peace. I do not try to change others, but accept them as they are. I express the spirit of power and love and self-control that God has given me. And as a consequence, I make my world a beautiful place in which to live. And so it is.